I am thankful and grateful, and this might be very difficult for some people to hear, but I am grateful for every single person that came into my life and gave me the experiences that they did, because it made me who I am today, and I love who I am today.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a hospitality-specific podcast dedicated to challenging mental health stigma and conversations designed to inspire a new, healthier, happier, and more sustainable hospitality profession. The Burnt Chef Journal is proudly sponsored by Planday, the workforce management system that helps your business give a shift. From scheduling rotas ahead to tracking time and attendance, managing your team's careers to managing your budgets, Planday has everything you need to make your day work in one easy-to-use platform. Try it yourself with a 30-day free trial only at planday.com. Get your shift together with Planday. This week, I am incredibly pleased to say that I am joined here by Angelika Breukers, who is a transformational and trauma-informed coach, speaker, and author dedicated to helping individuals overcome adversity and transform their lives. Drawing from her personal experiences of childhood trauma and abuse, she developed the ABC Change for Life programs, which includes acceptance, belief, and choice to guide others towards healing and self-empowerment. And also in 2021, Angelika published her book, Free to Be Me, the ABC of Being Truly Yourself, where she shares her journey and coaching philosophy, offering readers practical steps to embrace their true selves. Angelika, thank you for joining me this morning.
Well, hi, Kris. Thank you very much for having me and giving me this opportunity. It's great to be here.
Well, very, very pleased to have you on board. We spoke probably a month or two ago about the work that you're doing, and you told me a little bit about your story at the time. And I think that the work that you're doing is incredible, and I think that the story that you have and the reason why you came into this line of work is also just so amazing. So I would like to share that with our listeners at this moment in time and just find out a little bit more about you. So should we start from the beginning?
Yes, let's start from the beginning. So, yes, I just want to say that, yes, I do share my story, and I don't share my story to impress, but I share it to impress up on to people that change for life is possible in spite of thinking it isn't. And that is not something that I believe, that is something I know. Because I have changed my story, as the listeners will find out. And it is all about, it's connected to the story that we've been given and the story that we think in our thoughts and what we repeat with words. So it's about changing certain things in the story. But I come to that a bit later. But yeah, let's start at the beginning. I was born into domestic violence. Father, very violent, alcoholic. And from the age of 5, I was sexually abused by him. That's when that started. And then I kind of fast forward. And if I share this very matter of fact, it's because I have processed that trauma. It's not having any hold over me, the story itself. So he started to sexually abuse me from the age of 5. Very violent man. And of course, experiences that a child should never experience, which kind of led to developmental trauma. Then when I was 9 years old, my father told me that when I grew up, when I'm old enough, that I would be working as a prostitute to make him a lot of money. And the seed was planted in a way when your parents tell you or your father tells you there is a Father Christmas, you believe them. So, and it was very upsetting because I knew what it meant. But, you forget about it. So anyhow, fast forwarding in school, I wasn't able to learn because of the stress, being continuously on alert. And it wasn't a very good experience there. I literally, when I got my school report, when I was round about 10, 11 years old. I had it in writing. She tries very hard, but she cannot do it. So that is all the influence, that things that happen to us in our childhood. It goes into the subconscious mind. We record everything, and that is a belief that we take with us into our adult life, which I did. So fast forwarding again is that, of course, never done well in school. I got a job. But then also the next step, the next landmark that set me on my journey was meeting somebody in my life that suggested I attracted that man into my life that introduced me to the profession of becoming a prostitute. Basically, what I did then is I worked for many years as an escort in London. And why did I agree? Well, in a way, it was almost like this is what my father prepared me for. And also, I wanted to be loved. Growing up with not being looked after and not nurtured and not loved in the way that children and babies should be loved, it can leave people with similar experiences very empty, always looking for that love.
Christ, that's a hell of a start to life. We know through both of our works that and experiences that limiting beliefs often happen as a result of things that have happened in childhood, but to have both that developmental trauma happen so early and then also the limiting beliefs imprinted that strongly. How do you feel about that now looking back? You said you've processed that and you've done a hell of a lot of work and you speak very openly about this, but how does that feel now looking back at that?
Well, I feel what I have a little sort of like I say when I ever have an award or something like that, I prepared this speech. But I'm saying it anyway, already, because now with the processing and the learning and connecting with myself, with my authentic self, I am thankful and grateful. And this might be very difficult for some people to hear, but I am grateful for every single person that came into my life and gave me the experiences that they did, because it made me who I am today. And I love who I am today.
That's incredibly powerful. And that's very important, I think, for people to take note. It's not to say that you've excused what has happened, but it's also to reframe the experiences so that they are not barriers or holding you back, but they're progressive and excel you forward, right?
Yes, absolutely. And this is like what I do in my workshop, which is like acceptance, belief, and choice. And also, I like the ABC because A is for Angelika, B is for Breukers, and C is for change your story.
Marketing through and
That's
through.
marketing. And but acceptance, you're right. Acceptance is very important. And like you said, that when you accept what has happened to you, it doesn't make it right. It sets us free to actually do what we need to do to learn and overcome. And when I do my workshops, I always say, I wish I would be able to give you instructions on how to find acceptance, but that is not possible. We have to find the courage and the strength within. And sometimes it takes kind of action to do that we feel comfortable with. That reminds me of a story when my father was found out. And of course, he left. We used to live in a small town. So he was just on my radar. And I could sense him. And I got scared, and then I would see him. And I literally would go and hide in a shop or behind people because it's just overwhelmed within me still because I hadn't processed it. And then one day it was like, do I want to be scared for the rest of my life? And I don't know where the courage came from, but it came and it was there and I took it. And I thought, right, no, I don't. So I literally went to visit my father because I knew he was married again. And I literally went and visited him. I just wanted to overcome this fear of always looking out for him. And I can't tell you what I talked to him about, but I walked away feeling liberated. I felt freer. And maybe that was a start. And there's many situations where one has to take and get hold of the courage within us and learn and accept. Go on.
I can imagine how difficult that must have been, like especially being riddled with anxiety, and it's your body's way of saying to you that danger is still present and things don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And to push through that in quite let's make no bones, it was fucking traumatic what you went through, but to push through that and to challenge it head on, how did that impact you after that event? How did you feel in terms of your anxiety and in terms of your thought processes once you finally hit it straight on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, kind of hitting it straight on, kind of took that severity of the fear and the anxiety away. It taught me, well, for me personally, it's like, well, if you face this, then it will help to process it. Yeah. It set me on my journey, I believe, of being able to do that, because even just processing and facing our thoughts, our feelings, our limiting beliefs, we have to have the courage to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was that fight or flight response. You'd spent so long in flight that something had ticked inside you that was like, right, let's turn and run towards this thing and take it head on. I'm curious in terms of because all of this is upon retrospect, right? And we're looking back and you've done the work and you've got to an incredible place currently. So I guess at what stage in your life was it that you started to perhaps question? You were working as an escort, you were looking for that missing something, whether it's relationships or work. At what point did that sudden switch go where you were like, why? And you started to ask and questions the behaviors around that. How did that come about?
Well, how did that come about? Good question. It's been such a long time ago. But, what I can share with you is that from a very early age, I started to read books of, I ended up with Rumi, Carlos Castaneda, and there for me, they were like, it was giving me hope and different kind of perspective in my life. And it's kind of in simple terms when agreeing to become an escort. And then the point came of like, there is more in my life, to my life than this. And there is more of me, because I had a sense within me about, curiosity. I didn't want to live like that. I wanted to be authentic and kind of shed it all off, and then kind of leaving the man and staying in the business. And then it's like staying in the business for another couple of years and then actually looking for opportunity. So again, it's almost like coming to that point again where you said I was in fight and flight and then let's head on. It's that has repeated itself in my life to be able to do what I have done. And so again, I plucked up the courage I walked literally Piccadilly Circus around there in Regent Street because there were airlines, because I have a second language. But I didn't have the courage to go in. And what would I tell them? Where I've been for the last year and been doing and so on. But what I didn't realize is I set the intention, because at a dinner party, a friend of mine said, well, I hear you're looking for a job. And then it's like, yes, I am. I said very quickly, yes, before the parrot on the shoulder could tell me, who the hell do you think you are? You can't do this. And so I went for the interview. I got the job. And the funny thing is, I wanted to be a PA. I can organize, let's do this. So this is great. I even went to Pittman College, but I couldn't finish the course because at the time I didn't know I was dyslexic. But I thought I can do this anyway. But one thing I didn't know is that I was going to be a paid for financial director. And I thought, I was under the impression that a financial director would be able to spell and write. Well, I was wrong. And neither could I spell very well or write. So that wasn't a very good match because this goes back a long time ago. So I had to type this notes and it wasn't quite right. So it's like, oh my God, so it's quite funny. But however, then they moved me to sales and customer service, which was an IT company where my first job in the city. So again, it's this fight and flight and the courage, this thing that I have in me, making me to do this. And then I started a career in the IT industry. And then my last blue chip company I worked for, time for change again. I always was interested in alternative homeopathy and Reiki. I'm a Reiki master now and all these wonderful things. But universe is saying again, it's time for a change. Because what happened there is that I was a supervisor of mine in that company realized, he said, look, don't take this the wrong way, but is it possible that you have a learning difficulty? And because he noticed the way I was writing and so on, and because his mother worked with children who have learning difficulties. And sure enough, I got tested and the company stressed me to the max, maximum, and I was off with stress. And then I went back and I just couldn't do it anymore. I just left. And already I was training as a Bowen therapist, which is a hands-on therapy for stress and attention-based problems. And that kind of entered then is another chapter of my life where I got into homeopathy, Reiki, vortex healing, and so on. So looking back, it's like this chapter, something happens with it. You got to do it. Even though exams, they're terrifying me. I had to do an exam to be a Bowen therapist. So I practiced that for 14 years. And then the moment came that, again, the next chapter. And that is doing what I'm doing because I don't want my experience and my learning to go to waste. And the funny thing about this is, in a way, well, I think it's funny. When I had a breakup of my marriage, I had counseling because it just opened Pandora box and I needed help. So, but I remember sitting on my counselor's sofa, a red sofa. And I said, one day I'm going to write a book because I want people to know they don't have to feel the way they feel. And many, many, many years later, I did.
I find that story so inspiring because I think there's a theme to what you were talking about, which was when you were younger, the book had been written for you and you were following the narrative of that book. And then you keep mentioning chapters, which I think is a brilliant way to summarize the different experiences we have in life. Then you started to write the book yourself and follow your plan, being fully open to the fact that the direction was fluid and liquid, right? And then you move through to the point where you've written a physical book to help other people change their narrative so that they're not just following along with a predetermined path that they believe that they have no choice in. I think that's so inspiring.
Yeah, oh, thank you. It's and this is what I would like to do, inspire women and men. Unfortunately, at the moment, I'm only working with women, but I want to hoping to change to find the right person for that. And it's, I just cannot not do it, if that makes sense. But you just reminded me of something, which I think is helpful because to know and talk about or mention. There were times where I would go because I was so, I just could not see any further in my life. And, I would take action. I would go and have a reading or something like that. And then there was one lady that said to me, I can see you actually doing workshops. You would be very good at it. And then it's like, what? Me? Never. Never, you must be joking, because I remember all my experiences from the school, the limiting beliefs that have been imprinted. And when I was writing my book, or a bit later, I actually remembered that when I was a kid, I actually was doing workshops. I had younger children that lived in this block of flats, sort of like a nice 12 families. And we had a big garden at the back and a lawn in the front, and you could run around in the house. And I was very good at sport. So I would teach them, run workshops, how to physically improve, to be a better runner, to do more exercises. And I mean, I had them do all sorts of things. And then it's like, wow, I actually was doing it then, but I've forgotten. And this is what when I do my workshops, is that I try and help to remind people sometimes of what is it that you really want to do? What are you passionate about? And helping them to get back to their authentic self. And it's just amazing. And the clarity just by talking to you about it, I mean, it's just crystal clear, because you know it and then it falls to the back, but now it comes to the forefront again.
I was having a conversation with my family at the weekend about the stories that you tell yourself when you're younger, and how you do, perhaps you learn something or you have an experience, and it's not something that you vocalize in your head every day. You don't tell yourself necessarily all the time, but there is something always there that holds you. And I remember being dissuaded from setting up a business, or a window cleaning business at 13, because no one would ever do that. It's never going to work. Why should anyone ever pay a 13-year-old boy to go and wash their windows? And that was that was without knowing it, that pivotal moment was, as you mentioned earlier, the parrot on the shoulder, right? That imposter syndrome, that, well, why would anyone, there's people better out there than me, and why should I make it? So going back to the parrot on the shoulder, and obviously you've had a variety of roles, you've learned new skills, you mentioned you're dyslexic as well. How, both personally and perhaps for your client's point of view, how do you address that imposter syndrome? How do you challenge that thought process?
Yeah. So I did some learning from the best people in the trauma world, and Believe, Rose Lipton, Jodie Spencer. And what I learned from them, and Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk, and what I learned and what I studied for them, I put it into practice. And there is something that I learned is from those people, because they all have had experiences where they're used what they're now speaking about and write about, Because Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, we have to learn to be in the now and become self-aware of what we're thinking and what we're saying. And when we become aware, what I did, the process that I did is to actually become aware of my limiting thoughts, my negative beliefs. I wrote them down. And then on the other side, I wrote down the opposite of what I wanted that to be, the positive one. So, and learning that it is impossible to be positive all the time. So for me, then it was that I become aware. I'm thinking negative. I say, thank you very much for making me aware of that. So I am acknowledging it. I am not suppressing it, because otherwise it comes back and bites us in our bottom. So thank you. I choose to think this. So I had my positive version, and I make a bit of a story around it. And I did this process for a very long time. And then the wonderful thing is that it's all to do with neuroplasticity and rewiring. And then something came and my brain did it by itself. And then the negative neural pathway was bing, it wasn't there anymore. Did that mean I could stop? No, it continues.
Yeah.
Right? Having to do that. And this is how you do it. And it's impossible to be positive all the time. It's about the processing. So for me, is becoming aware. This is how I'm feeling. What can I do? What can I think different? but also following it up with words because it has energy. Words have energy. There is Dr. Emoto. He has done, what has he done? An experiment with water. So I use a bit of science in my workshop to let people know. So, and the water was exposed to negative, evil words. And the water became cloudy and dark. It just looks like a dark vortex, kind of wormhole or something like that. And then the water was exposed to loving and kind words. And the water took the form of like almost a snowflake, diamond looking. And it's like he said, consciousness has an effect on water, and we are 75% of water. So what we're thinking and what we're saying affects our body, how we feel. And I demonstrate that with muscle testing from kinesiology. Are you aware of that?
No,
No.
Yeah, please explain for myself.
Yeah, so if I may, okay, normally when I'm on stage, I do it with, I use the arm. And so what it is on video in my workshop, I do it like this. You can, if you want to, you can take part.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, so I use the 2 index finger and the thumbs, okay? And then we make a link. Okay. And with one hand, you decide to always keep it close. And with the other one, you're going to pull. All right. Just straight ahead. Don't pull up or down. So now we're going to ask the body for a yes and pull. Now ask your body for a no and pull. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't open it. Now use a different name. So I'm saying my name is Susie, and it opens up.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I say my name and it's Angelika and it stays close. Now think of something that you don't like or negative. Opens up. Now I think about what I do, what I love doing. It's like, it's a yes. Yeah. It's great.
Okay.
Yeah? Because when I do this with somebody on stage, I put pressure on the hand, and when I ask them to release, so it goes down. Yeah, the body knows what's right and what is good for us, and almost like what's false, negative. So when we're not thinking, when we're not feeling so well, how am I feeling? What am I thinking?
It's an incredibly powerful technique. There's a certain level of self-awareness that I think is required for that, and we talk about self-awareness like we take it for granted. Everyone's self-aware, but it's amazing. I think how many people may not necessarily be aware of just their internal monologue, being able to identify those, I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does require training. It's like a muscle, isn't it? You have to train it, and you have to also catch it and turn it around. Because if you do today's going to be I used to be a prime example, right? So when I was younger, I used to wake up and go, today's going to be a terrible day. I'd look in the mirror and go, my hair just doesn't look right. I don't feel comfortable. I'd already set the story for the day. Yeah. And I can guarantee you the first thing that I would do is step out. I'd trip over the doorstep on the way out. I'd bang my knee. I'd step in dog poo. And, I'd probably miss the bus, or my chain on my bike would break. And you'd go, well, that's just how I expected today to go. And you reinforce that. And then that becomes a regular thought pattern. But actually being able to identify that, to be able to go, okay, why? Why is today going to be a bad day? What's happened today that's going to be bad? Nothing, yeah? What could go well that would change your outlook? What could be differently? You haven't dropped toothpaste down yourself today. Brilliant. Congratulations. Well done. Your hair doesn't look bad, but actually who's going to notice your hair? Who's going to notice that single bit of hair sticking up? No one, because they're paying too much attention to what they're living on a daily basis. And once you can start to program that change of narrative, it's amazing the impact that it can have, and you can change it. I think it's an important
Absolutely.
thing. Both you and I are proof of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. And it is about, because I talk about attitude, the attitude that we have, and where do we get it from? Become aware. What are you saying? Where did you learn that? Is that true, what you're thinking?
Mm.
I thought, well, I can't do it. It's a belief that, no, I can do it. And it is, working with the rewiring the brain. It is hard work, but it is so worth it. It's painful. It's almost like painful. So I don't want to scare anybody, but, it's like it takes effort. Action needs to be taken. Without action, nothing happens.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, consider heading over to our website and supporting our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental illness and creating a healthier, happier, and more sustainable industry by purchasing some of our branded merchandise. We have a whole range of t-shirts, hoodies, chef's jackets, well-being journals, plus a whole host more available on worldwide dispatch. All funds raised from sales of these items go towards free-to-access e-learning content, as well as providing free support systems and help for those who may be experiencing difficulty with their mental health.
Yeah. And you say it's painful. I think it's painful in the same way for me personally. My experience is that every day now I look for an opportunity to grow. I don't spend much time reading. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I used to really, really invest heavily into every last little bit. But I find opportunity to grow now from mistakes, from accidents, from conversations, and I look for things. And growing in that respect sometimes leaves your head in a bit of a muddle. Perhaps you feel a little bit more tired, a little bit more lethargic. But it's like going down to the gym. If you're working a new muscle group, you're going to wake up in the morning feeling a little bit tense, a little bit sore, but that will subside. And the next time you go, you'll be able to do a little bit more than you could do before because that muscle's repaired and regrown. And that's how I think about it. So that it's discomfort, but that's only because it's not normal yet. It's not routine for you.
Exactly. It is. Yeah. Thank you. That is, it is like coming out of the comfort zone and, having the courage to do that, and its own becomes the new comfort zone. It's making the effort of almost like, how can I say, that is going against the grain of the ego, because as soon as you do that, then no, I don't want to do that. I am much more comfortable just sitting on the sofa and eating chocolate or doing what makes me feel good. And it's that incredible drive and wanting to, and it's going the extra mile.
Yeah. Which is, it can be challenging, I think, when you're feeling physically and mentally tired. Hospitality is incredibly, emotionally and physically, it's a very demanding profession. And we did a study with Bournemouth University that showed that 68% of hospitality professionals experience quite high levels of imposter syndrome that affects their ability to progress or to do the job to the best of their ability, because they're always worried about the fact that they're not the right people, they're not well skilled enough, whatever it might be, whatever we tell ourselves as part of that.
Yeah.
And so if you were to have a client that comes to you and says to you, look, I'm just so tired, I'm emotionally drained all the time, and I want to be able to change this narrative, I want to be able to change the way that I operate, do they have to start large? Is it something that they go in with a massive amount of effort, or what would you suggest?
What I would suggest is to do some breathing for relaxation, to calm the mind down. I would suggest the grounding that I do, and to keep a journal of the thoughts, and just to be slowly coming aware. Yeah. And knowing that some of what they're thinking, because they think they're an imposter, to reflect, where is this coming from? Is this actually true? And breaking it slowly, bit by bit, down. to get to our authentic self and to be aware of the thoughts and finding the joy again in what you're doing by getting rid of all the imposter, the negative beliefs, the negative thoughts, the comparing, because, people have also a tendency to compare. Oh, I'm never going to be as good as this person. Who knows? That particular person that's thinking that is actually maybe going to be even better in something else than that person. And it's not about, oh, look at me, or it's finding the authentic self and using the tools and taking action to release the stress, because it's the experiences and the beliefs that come from that stress us. Thought is an incredible stressor.
Yeah. And I think if people are struggling with knowing where to begin with this, or maybe you just don't know what your authentic self, or like myself back in my mid-20s, I had no idea who I was. You could have said to me that I believe in the left or the right, or I believe in God or I don't believe in God, and I would have just agreed naively with you because I didn't really actually have any core foundational understanding of who I was as a human being or as a person. So for me, I had to go through counseling or CBT therapy to be able to understand what makes my brain tick that way, or more importantly, where that limitation of my personality was founded, and what I needed to do to be able to start to build that suit of armor back up again in the way that I wanted it built. Authenticity and transparency and helping others and unapologetically being myself as well, I think was another cool thing, because when you're trying to emotionally regulate yourself and fit into what you think others think you should be, it's incredibly tiring, and you end up with an absolute tears. So I think if people are struggling with knowing what your authentic self looks like, you can try soul searching, you can try mindfulness or meditation, but I think, don't be afraid to ask for help. Therapy doesn't necessarily always have to be because you're really sick and unwell. It can just be a tool to progress and to learn and develop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You see, I sit here now and say, and saying what I'm saying because of what I learned over all these years. But about 30 years ago, I wouldn't be saying what I'm saying now because of the process of learning, where it comes from and doing the self-awareness. And it's the reflection. And 10 years ago, I would say I'm my authentic self. Now I'm saying, I learned something more about myself, and it's kind of, I am authentic now. But in 10 years, I'll maybe find something else which I didn't realize. And, I'm even more authentic now, yeah? It's it's not that, kind of on a level. It's sort of like, it's just the learning. And the learning is so important. And there was something I was going to say, but I forgot now. But it is becoming aware of where it comes from and being, where it comes from, where we have been giving the beliefs and undoing the program, taking the action. And sometimes to find out if we're authentic about something or not is, just to sit still. How does that feel to me? Does that feel, no resistance, that feels comfortable, that feels like me? Because as soon as there is friction or something like that, then that is not necessarily your authentic self.
Yeah, there's a sensation that once you become aware of it, you can start to identify. So I don't know whether it's the same sensation as gut instinct or not, but I think that there is certainly there's a sensation there where if you're having to suppress a thought, an action, a behavior, your personality, or do something that doesn't necessarily feel right, you cognitively you have to suppress it, don't you? And
you do.
And as a result, that sort of leaves like this darkness, this bad seed inside you that might not necessarily hurt you. I mean, for me, it didn't. I did that at 16 years old, and it didn't come biting me until I was 26. So it wasn't necessarily going to come back and hurt you straight away, but you know it because you feel it, and there's don't know how to say it. There's an intrinsic knowing that you know that if you do this at some stage, it is going to have a repercussion. I don't know how can you explain that feeling? What's
Well, what I was going to say, I think what I've forgotten is when you were saying where it comes from is being aware of when we grow up in an environment, even there's big trauma, there's small trauma, and there's overwhelming life experience. Yeah. And sometimes as children, we have to adapt and make ourselves small. Or children become pleasers when they don't necessarily get what they need. They will do anything to survive and get what they nurtured. So we take that with us. And that is where the gut instinct, gets messed up. Because we want to be who we are, but we can't be because of the situation that we are in. So we're taking that with us in our life, and it gives us our beliefs because we are programmed in the environment that we grow up.
If all of this sounds a little bit airy-fairy at the moment and people are going, what on earth? Like, this all sounds great, but how the hell do I actually put this into practice? What is it that people can do to first identify? Take an example. I'm walking down the road. I see someone fall over. I guess from looking back in history, the first thought process is, I should do something about that. The second thought process is, someone else will deal with that, and then that's okay. And then the third feeling after that is, I feel really guilty, and it sits with you for a few days. So I guess from working with clients, if they are trying to get to that authentic self, they're trying not to fight against gut instinct, are there any tools or techniques that you have for them?
Yeah, it's having compassion for oneself. I give you an example. I saw a lady walking on a wheelie thing, and her walking is really, really dodgy, kind of, oh my God, she's going to fall any moment. And then I thought, no, she will be fine. She will be fine. And then I feel, oh man, I should have gone out and make sure that she is okay. I only saw her for a certain, so I felt bad about it, but it's like, okay, this situation will come around and maybe next time I can do it better or differently. So now then you have the awareness and you know what sits with you, what feels right with you or not. Yeah. So have compassion. Don't criticize yourself too much. And then I went out the next time I saw her and it's like, oh my God, she's definitely going to fall now. So I went outside and talked to her. I says, look, are you okay? Do you need help? And she goes, well, no, I'm nearly home and I'm perfectly fine. Yeah. So, okay. So I did what I wanted to do and that felt good. But I also know now that when I see her next time, I don't have to be worried about her. And why am I worried? It's compassion for people. She will be okay. She is capable, the way she walks, of doing it. It's almost like when you see somebody with Parkinson's, it was really kind of, and I'm like, oh my God. It's kind of sitting still and listening to how we're feeling.
It's important. It's like when we talk about obviously mental health and the training that we do in terms of engaging, there is often a sixth sense when you know it. Like when I walk through London, there's someone sat on the bench with their heads in their hands, and there is something internally that goes, they're not okay. There's a secondary reaction, which is I should probably go and speak to them and see if they're okay. And it would be very easy to come up with a follow-up, which is, it's not my problem. I've got enough on my plate, but actually scratching that itch, pulling that trigger and saying, fuck it, no, this is a moment that I need to see through. Otherwise it's going to end up eating me up or I'll be thinking about it. And those moments do stay with you. And those little moments of kindness, like, even in workplaces, if there's someone who you think or suspect, it'd be very easy to go, they're probably having a bad day, it's not my issue. But actually taking that time to sit down with someone and connect. And even if they turn around and go, I'm completely fine, like you don't need to worry. And at least you've done it. then.
You've done it, exactly. And there's just so many moments flying around in my head now, but it's that moment you go to somebody and says, are you okay? They're being heard, they're being listened to, and somebody showing them compassion. They might not share everything, and they will say, oh, I am okay, because I feel they have to say that. Yeah. But at least, there is a glimpse, that's the way I see it, a glimpse of hope. Because we all need to be seen and to be heard and have compassion.
I know we're trading stories at this moment in time, but I was reminded of a funny one where only recently, probably a couple of months ago, there was a lady who was crossing a road. I pulled up in my car, and I wound down my window and I said, "Would you like some help?" And she was like, "What?" I was like, "Would you like some help?" She's like, "What?" I said, "Are you struggling to cross the road? Would you like me to get out and give you a hand?" She was like, "Go away."
Yeah, you did.
I just wound my window up and I was like, that's so hilarious. Like that moment where you're out reaching to someone, she was like, just get away. And I was like, oh, well, I scratched the itch. You're not always going to get the right result, are you?
No, that's true. Every situation is different. We have judgment sometimes. Again, another story is like, somebody told a story about this man being in the underground with his children. In the children's, they were kind of going a bit wild and people were judging and, why isn't he going to do something about it? And what it turned out to be is he just lost his wife. He just came from hospital. So I suppose, let's not be so quickly be judging.
Because, that's so true. So true, isn't it? You just don't know what other people are going through. And actually, that small moment of kindness, like, you don't have to have an experience. Like I talk about empathy, and people are like, well, I've never been through that experience, so how can I show empathy? I said, well, I've never ridden a horse, but if I was to meet someone who'd fallen off the back of a horse, I can envisage what that might be like, and I can imagine they're in pain. So there's empathy from that element. I don't necessarily need to understand how to ride a horse or have ever fallen off a horse to be able to demonstrate empathy. And it is small things like, if you've got a father who's struggling with kids and just that situation, or a mother who's juggling with kids, those situations in themselves are stressful without having any other traumatic events going on. And to be able to appreciate that and empathize and maybe just do one small thing that can help is so important. It's passing on that goodwill, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And, what you just reminded me of saying this is that, and I say this in my book, is that nobody gets up in the morning and says, today is a great day to become an alcoholic, or today is a great day to really behave badly. Because everybody has been through some experiences to get to the point where they are at, and not, necessarily behave in a way that they should. And that doesn't excuse what they do when they, people are being alcoholic and, seeing the violence, protecting my mother, it doesn't excuse that at all. But I knew that my father had a journey, and just remembering that. And in time, when people find the acceptance, I always wanted to be somebody else. I didn't want to deal with what my feelings, the emotions, what it meant, the labels. I just didn't want to do that. I mean, it was just so shameful and so horrible and so nasty. But then guess what? Everybody else was taken. And when we don't do our own work, universe will make sure that we do.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I thank the universe for that.
Very true. Rewrite your own story.
Yes.
Do not subscribe yourself to other people's and challenge yourself. The growth is always possible. And there's a technique that I used to use, and I can't remember who shared it with me. It was on one of the podcasts I must have listened to, which was every morning pull a notepad out from the side of your bed, and you write down 3 or 5 things what you feel that you want to achieve. Now, it could be extrinsic. It could be that you want £1 million or $1 million, or it could be that you want to go to the moon, or it could be that you want to cure world hunger, or it could be that you want to learn how to swim. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how far-fetched, or even if you know how you're going to get to that objective, but write it down. Don't look at it again, put it away in your drawer. At night, repeat the process. It doesn't need to be the same things. It can be different things, whatever you feel at that moment in time. And the scary thing about that process is that, I haven't been to the moon yet, but who knows? Possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
When you look back through a lot of those pieces of paper, because I've never read them again, I just wrote them down and then carried on. What has actually happened is I'd started to tick off certain areas that were within my grasp, and even things that seemed completely unattainable at that time have been achieved. And it's rewriting that limiting beliefs into a more and you don't even that requires very little effort, a minute of your time and pen and paper.
That's right. There is something is called early morning writing. Well, similar to what you're saying, but you write 3 pages, or getting things off your chest, and you just write whatever you want to say. And then afterwards, you burn it. You let it go in love and light, because it empties your mind. You get it off your chest, and it creates a sense of freedom. If it comes back, the next thing comes back, one does it again. Nobody needs to see it. This is not intention to harm or hurt somebody, because thoughts and words have power. Is not to hurt them, but just getting it off in the chest and say, I let this go with love and light. And then burning it. And journaling, as everybody has their own way of journaling, is about finding what's right for each individual person. Yeah? Because it's difficult for people to be mindful sometimes, because they haven't got the calm nervous system. So it's just finding the individual way of what works for them, what calms them down, what makes them feel peaceful, maybe going for a walk. Or when they know they haven't got a choice, know that there always is a choice. And even when the choice is only to sit down and listen what comes to you. Because there's always a choice, there's always an answer.
That's so true, yeah. So I've recently done a few. I was similarly to your dyslexia. I was with someone in Vienna fairly recently, and they're asking me questions about, have you ever questions why? I always walk around with headphones in. I'm terrible at loud parties. I'm notoriously impulsive when it comes down to making decisions and firing from the hip, and that's become a lot more prominent since I've become my true authentic self. And I just thought, well, this is me. This is who I am. And they said, have you ever done a test for ADHD before? And I said, no. I said, I'm not too worried about whether I have it or I don't have it. And they were like, well, you're not curious about some of the behaviors that you have to see what is personality based and what is neurodiverse. And I went, okay. So I was interested. So I did the test, and I did a few numerous tests. And they all showed that I had some degree of ADHD. So I thought, well, this isn't, this is me. This is psychosomatic. I'm answering this as if I was. So I got a family member to answer the questions on behalf of me. And again, it flagged up ADHD. And I suddenly went, oh, bloody hell. I said, it's... I'm grateful for it. If it is, I haven't gone to the GP to get it medically diagnosed yet, but when you start to look at certain behaviors and especially from my personal life, I think you start to see certain things that you go, that makes sense. So I'm curious. And again, it's another chapter, right? It's a new chapter where, if it does become diagnosed, I'll be learning again about myself,
Exactly. It's like when I was found out being dyslexic, I thought I was stupid. I was the worst pupil in class. Yeah. So when I was found out that I was dyslexic, it all made sense. I was very happy, but I cried a lot too, because I was working in the last blue chip company. We had to do projects and I had to take part in the projects. And then I was supposed to be sometimes writing a report. No way. I can't do that. I can't write officially. So God knows how I got away with it, not writing it. I did get some dirty looks from the person, that was leading the project. I was, oh my God. It's like, oh, that woman. But we taught other skills. And it is like when we find out, it's understanding, isn't it? Actually, it's understanding. That's why I did that. And that makes sense. And it's like so many times people say, oh, you just got to do it, because when people are neurodiverse, they come across very competent. And when they say, well, I can't do that, they think, oh, they're lazy. It's not laziness, it's people not hearing them. And, and I had so many people, oh, you can do the post on social media. You have to just do that. And I says, don't you think if I could have done it, I would have done it by now? So it's hearing and knowing, yeah. And then people can speak up with confidence and say, actually, no, I cannot. Understanding our own behavior. It's like earlier we were talking about something and I'm thinking, many people, and this is what I do is I do the workshops, yeah. And then, especially through my kick with unemployed women and low in income, I give them support after the workshop when they have challenges, because when we want to change a belief and the way that we think and so on, the subconscious mind rebels. So I help them process what they need to process. And then we understand why we are the way we are. And it makes it a lot easier. Then we don't beat ourselves up so much. Oh, I just love this. Sorry.
I'm just curious about unlocking this new superpower and seeing how far it can take me. I know my...
Yes, it's gift is superpower, exactly.
Yeah, my partner always says, she says, you're the least emotionally intelligent person that I've ever met. And I said, that's funny, because in my professional life, I'm the most emotionally intelligent. And that also then, when I've started looking at actually ADHD and the traits that has, I realized that what I used to call wearing my heart on my sleeve is I feel emotion and then I immediately follow it. From a professional context, I wear a mask, right? It's professional, and you have to, there's another barrier that isn't just necessarily what I think and feel at that moment in time. But it's so interesting. And I do think it's a super, I'm just learning. Well, it's curious. Watch this space for more details on that. But
yes, no, that'd be very interesting. That's why my Gabor Mate, he's ADHD and he speaks about ADHD. And what he says, that what he did is that, with some other events included in this, but he used, his ADHD made him so focused, that he did do all this work, medical. He's a doctor, he's a medical doctor, and so on. And it's very interesting to listen to. So we can use our gifts, what other people think they are not. They think it's, somebody's just been lazy or stupid. No, our brain works in a different way.
Yes. So you mentioned you work with women with low incomes and who are out of work and in challenging situations. What services what's your most sort of your go-to services in terms of workshops and mentorships that you feel that people should know about? And then how do they find you as well?
Yeah, this is it. So I do have a website which is called changinglife.org. On that website, if people want to donate, then they can do that. There is a shop, it's Christmas. And on that particular website, if anybody is unemployed or on very low income and can't get the help that they need, then contact me via that. Yeah. Then also I have my Angelika Breukers, which is my personal website. And yes, people can contact me through that. and book a 20-minute discovery call. And then we just take it from there. It's about the one-to-one sessions. People don't have to have had the same experience that I had, because we all have had overwhelming life experiences at some point.
Yeah. Well, we'll put the information in the show notes as well. And I would urge anyone, I mean, Angelika's story is incredibly powerful and also very inspirational as well. So I think if anyone is looking at changing the narrative, challenging some of their limiting beliefs and learning from Angelika, then please do get in contact. And as a final thing, Angelika, if you were to go back in time now and tell sort of a 16-year-old's self something now that you now know, what would you say?
You have more courage than you are ever going to be aware of. And that I love that, whatever age 16-year-old girl, I love her the way she just is.
That's lovely, very profound. Thank you. I appreciate that. Angelika, thank you ever so much for joining me on today's podcast and for sharing your story and enlightening our listeners. And we'll continue talking offline and see how we can help.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Okay, thank you for sharing your story, because we all have a story.
Yeah, thank you.